Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and today we're looking at the 2014 Ford Fiesta. This has been refreshed for this model year, and it's Ford's subcompact entry in the United States. This does business with the likes of the Honda Fit, the Mazda 2, the Chevy Sonic, as well as the Kia Rio. The big news for 2014 is right up front, because Ford has decided to graft on their new corporate Aston Martin looking grille to the front of the Ford Fiesta. I was a little bit concerned how this would look on the Fiesta because the car wasn't originally designed for this grille like the Ford Fusion was, but I think it brings the Fiesta up from an average compact car to a really good looking compact car, especially on the front. In addition to that grille, we have some additional styling changes up front. Gone are the LED daytime running lamps that the old Fiesta got, and there were vertical strips right around here. Instead, we get these fog lamps going on, and we get an all-new headlamp module. The side profile hasn't changed much for 2014, which means that in America we still get this regular old hatchback, which is familiar to our European cousins, but we also get a unique for North America and China sedan version of the Fiesta. The most important thing about that sedan version is that it has a trunk, obviously, because it's a sedan, but it's also a little more than a foot longer than the hatchback in order to accommodate that trunk. Not a whole lot changes here in terms of the rear door access for that sedan, but it is just a little bit bigger than this hatchback. 2014 brings new, more attractive tail lamp modules to the Fiesta. We also have an optional backup camera as well as backup parking sensors, which are standard on the titanium model that we're testing right here. They're not available on the base Fiesta, but pricing differences between the base and the titanium model aren't really great. Let's talk about pricing now. Pricing for the 2014 Fiesta starts at $14,000, and that is for a base model sedan. Getting a hatchback in any trim will add $600 to your tab. The more popular SE trim starts at $16,000, again for that sedan version, and the titanium sedan starts at $18,800. Even the most expensive fully loaded titanium hatchback tops out at $21,780. How does that compare to the competition? Well, the Honda Fit starts at $17,160. The Mazda 2 is in that $15,000 to $16,000 range. The Chevy Sonic, about $14,000 to $20,000, and the Kia is about $14,000 to $18,000, being the cheapest in this particular segment. For most Fiesta shoppers, not a whole lot's changed under the hood for 2014. We have the same 1.6-liter four-cylinder engine under the hood of all Fiesta models by default. It's 120 horsepower, 122 pound-feet of torque. It's mated to either a 5-speed manual transmission or a 6-speed dual-clutch automatic. It's very similar to what Volkswagen calls their DSG transmission. New for 2014 is a 1-liter 3-cylinder engine. It's a $995 option available only on the SE trim of the Ford Fiesta. It produces 123 horsepower and 148 pound-feet of torque thanks to a new direct injection system with a turbocharger. That's available only with the 5-speed manual transmission, but it does bump the fuel economy numbers up from 29.39 in the 1.6-liter 4-cylinder up to 32.45, making this one of the most efficient non-hybrid vehicles available in America. Front seat comfort is fairly good for this class, but do keep in mind that this is a subcompact car and the seats aren't as adjustable as they would be in a compact car like a Ford Focus. We do have a manual height adjustable seat right here, forward and backward control lever right there under the seat, and we do have a manual adjustable lumbar support in this particular Fiesta Titanium. We have a tilt telescoping steering column with a decent range of motion, but if you're after a more comfortable seat, then you're going to have to step up at least one model to something like a Ford Focus. When it comes to rear seat comfort, the Fiesta does fairly well, but again, it is important to keep in mind that the Fiesta is a fairly small car. This front seat's adjusted for me at 6 feet tall. As you can see, my knees are touching the backs of that front seat. I'll kick off my shoes so I can try and get over to the other side. And this front seat's adjusted for a 6'5" passenger we had in the vehicle. As you can see, my knees are really digging into that seat back. On the bright side, I do have a decent amount of headroom back here in this hatchback model. If I move over to the middle seat, yet again, there is a decent amount of compromise due to the size of the Fiesta. These seats aren't very wide back here because the Fiesta is not very wide, so fitting 3 adults in the back would be a little bit tricky, especially since this rear middle headrest is hitting me right about here in my back. Ford could have cut a few corners and given us a 100% folding seat back, but they didn't. Instead, we have a pretty standard 60-40 folding seat back, which folds almost flat with the upper level of that rear cargo area. Part of the reason for the Fiesta sedan being larger than the hatchback version is because its trunk is fairly large, and Americans like large trunks. That's really obvious because even when you take a look at something like a Nissan Versa, which is the least expensive car in America, it has a pretty good sized trunk. Back here in the hatchback, we have this removable tonneau cover, flips up with the hatchback, and it reveals a decently sized hatchback area. This is the largest size roller bag you can carry on a domestic flight. You can fit a decent number of them in the trunk. But there's a little bit more space available under this little cargo hatch right here, which you can readjust inside there. You can also take it out and you have access to just a little bit more room in the trunk. Under that is where you'll find your spare tire and your jack arrangement. Overall, the hatchback scores 5 out of 10 points and the sedan scores 7 out of 10 points in our exclusive Trunk Comfort Index. One nice touch is that we have a handle right here to help you close the hatchback lid, something that an awful lot of economy cars cut in the name of cost savings. For a subcompact car, Ford's Fiesta is known for a high level of equipment. Right here we have these 4-way adjustable headrests, we have height adjustable seat belts over there, and in our titanium model we do have leather heated seats. Over here on the doors we have a mixture of hard and soft touch plastics as you'd expect from a car in this price class. Hard touch plastics right here, and then soft plastic armrest right there. One thing to note is if you're a taller driver or a taller passenger, more likely than not your elbow is going to end up right over here, which means these armrests are in kind of an odd place on the door. That's just because the Fiesta is not a very big vehicle. Moving over to the dashboard, we have our round air vents and some stylized air vents over here. This area right here is a trim strip that lights up at night with a color changing LED strip. You can press this little button down here on the dashboard and change the color of the interior accent lighting in the Fiesta. Fairly decently sized glove box right there. Can easily hold a tablet computer. Up here on the dashboard we have soft touch plastics up here, hard touch plastics down there. The major change inside for 2014 is right here in the middle of the dashboard, because Ford has now given the Fiesta My Ford Touch. This is a 6.5-inch version of the 8-inch system that you find in all the other Ford products. Control buttons for that are right down here. Moving lower in the dashboard, our titanium model has a single-zone automatic climate control. We have heated seats over here, and this button changes the light of the accent lighting in the Fiesta. We're in a 5-speed manual version of the Fiesta, but if you do get that 6-speed automatic, the other changes for 2014 are we now have a sport mode as well as a manual shift mode in that model. Moving further down the center console, we have a 12-volt power outlet, fairly large and well-sized cup holders. Those do change color with the vehicle ambient lighting color choice button right there as well. Moving back to the center armrest, this is where you'll find the USB and auxiliary inputs for that My Ford Touch system. 2 USB ports right there, as well as an auxiliary stereo mini input, and that's where you'll find the SD card slot for the My Ford Touch navigation software, which is a $795 option. Ford has retained the stylized 3-gauge instrument cluster. It's a little bit more attractive than what you'll find in the Chevy Sonic. Back here we'll find a slightly different steering wheel. This now has buttons for My Ford Touch, voice command button, track forward, backward, as well as phone controls, volume up and down, and then on this side we get our cruise control buttons. It means that this little stalk right here, which used to control the sync-only system in last year's Ford Fiesta, now is simply the trip computer as well as the turn signals. Before we go out on the road, let's talk rubber. Our Fiesta Titanium has the standard 16-inch alloy wheels wrapped in 195 50R16 rubber. That's fairly wide for a car that weighs only about 2,500 pounds, making this one of the lighter cars available for sale in America. Once out on the road in the Fiesta, you'll notice a few things, and the first thing isn't exactly driving related, it's ergonomic. It's the distance of this My Ford touchscreen from the driver. I'm 6 feet tall. I tend to like sitting fairly upright in my seat, but fairly far back in the seat track because of the length of my legs, and that means that I can't touch the screen without leaning forward in the seat. That is just a little bit uncomfortable. The second thing you'll notice about the Fiesta on the road is the ride. The ride is fairly firm for a subcompact car, and that's thanks to the Fiesta's roots. The last thing that you'll notice immediately about the Fiesta on the road is the cabin noise. This isn't as quiet as the modern Focus and the more modern Ford Fusion. It's about 73 decibels to 74 decibels at 50 miles an hour on the same road that we test most vehicles. It's about the same as the new Corolla, which is also fairly loud in its segment. That was just a little bit surprising, again because of how quiet the Focus, the Fusion, and the Taurus are. We ran from 0 to 60 in just over 9 seconds in this 4-cylinder model of the Fiesta with the 5-speed manual transmission. It is a little bit faster if you choose the 6-speed automatic, and that's because that 6-speed automatic is a dual clutch transmission. It costs about $1,100, but it's completely worth it in the Fiesta because the gear ratios in the 5-speed manual transmission are all at the very low end of the range. That means when you're driving on the freeway at 70 miles an hour in 5th gear, the engine's spinning over 3,100 RPM, and it is fairly noisy on the highway as a result. If you opt for the 6-speed automatic, it really drops that engine RPM down to a much more usable level and a much better level for sound deadening in the car on the highway. The Fiesta is one of the peppier entries in this segment, definitely faster than the Mazda 2's 100 horsepower engine and 4-speed automatic combo, as well as the new Toyota Yaris. When it comes to handling numbers, the Fiesta does very well. It's not quite as crisp or as accurate as the Honda Fit, which has a very good driving dynamic out on these winding mountain roads, but it is markedly better than the Chevy Sonic or the Toyota Yaris or some of the other entries in this segment. The Kia Rio is fairly bad out on the road in its current generation. It's fairly cheap though, so do keep that in mind. It is a decent amount cheaper than this Ford Fiesta, so you do get what you pay for, however. The 3-cylinder EcoBoost engine is quite an interesting option, not just because it's the first time I've ever heard of anybody charging extra to go from a 4-cylinder to a 3-cylinder engine, but because it's a modern direct injection turbocharged 3-cylinder engine and it gets 45 miles per gallon on the highway with the 5-speed manual transmission. That's the only problem part of that equation for me, is that 1-liter turbo engine is only available with the 5-speed manual transmission. You can't get it with the 6-speed automatic, and if you could, I suspect the fuel economy would be a little bit better, just like the fuel economy is better with the 6-speed automatic. Speaking of fuel economy, we've been averaging 31.5 miles per gallon in this 5-speed manual equipped Fiesta, and we have been driving it as hard as we can. The interesting thing is that no matter how we've been driving this Fiesta, we still have been averaging around 32 miles per gallon. So treating it fairly gently on the highway, we've been getting maybe 33 miles per gallon average, and absolutely flogging it on these winding mountain roads. We haven't been able to get any lower than about 31 miles per gallon. Curb weight's only about 2,500 pounds, so it is an awful lot of fun to fling around on these winding mountain roads. It's an awful lot more fun than you would suspect, and it really gives you an insight into what the Ford Fiesta ST is going to be like when we get our hands on it in a few months. If the Fiesta is going to be your daily driver, then I suggest that you either spend $1,000 on the automatic transmission for this 4-cylinder engine, or you spend $1,000 upgrading to the 1-liter turbo engine, which of course retains this 5-speed manual transmission. The reason for that is that this 4-speed engine doesn't have a whole lot of low-end torque, so the gearing on the 5-speed manual has to be fairly low. So again, we don't have that very high top gear, which means it's fairly noisy out on the highway, but it also means that you find yourself shifting an awful lot on mountain roads, and that really gets to be a drag somewhere where the automatic transmission helps you. However, the 3-cylinder engine not only gives you more torque than this 4-cylinder engine, it also delivers that torque at a lower RPM, making it an awful lot more drivable with the same manual transmission. The steering in this car is numb but very accurate, but it's the chassis that really shines. On these winding mountain roads, it really just encourages you to drive the car hard, something that the Fiesta really does incredibly well, especially when you compare it to the majority of the subcompact competition. Again, the Mazda 2 is just a slight bit better. The steering is just a little bit more accurate, and it just feels a little bit more fun out on the road, but overall, I would take this over that Mazda 2. Again, the Honda Fit is also just a little bit more precise out on the road, and the chassis is just a little bit better suited, but overall the Fit is an awful lot older and an awful lot less exciting than this new Fiesta. Let's talk about transmissions in a little bit greater detail. The 5-speed manual's throws are long and they're also a little bit rubbery, but the clutch pedal engagement has a very nice linear feel to it. The 6-speed automatic is very different than what most people have experienced, and I think that's why you'll hear a decent number of complaints from owners and certain reviewers as well. And that's probably because they don't understand how the transmission really works and what's going on when it's shifting gears. The 6-speed power shift transmission is not a true automatic transmission in the normal sense of the word, and that's because it doesn't have planetary gear sets and it doesn't have a torque converter. At its heart, it is really two different manual transmissions in the same case with two clutch packs. One transmission handles the odd gears and the other transmission handles the even gears. That way one transmission can be ready for you as soon as you want to shift out of one gear and into the next. So when you're shifting from first gear to second gear, it shifts just like a manual transmission. It goes into neutral for a very brief moment and then it goes into second gear. So there's a slight delay in power that's a little bit unusual compared to normal automatic transmissions. Because there's no torque converter, it also means that when you're starting from a stop in first gear, the car can roll backwards a little bit, which is very unusual, again, for a regular automatic transmission, but perfectly normal for a manual transmission. So the bottom line and the thing that you need to know is that 6-speed automatic transmission shifts like someone driving a 6-speed manual transmission very, very well. Someone that's very good on the clutch pedal, very good on the shifter, never misses a shift, but it does drive very much like a manual transmission. The benefit from that is the fuel economy, and that's part of why the fuel economy in the automatic transmission version of the Fiesta is higher than the manual transmission version. It's also why I really wish Ford would put that 6-speed power shift transmission behind the 3-cylinder 1-liter turbo engine, because I think that it would make the fuel economy of that 1-liter turbo even better. It would also improve the driving experience. The Fiesta is not as dynamic out on the road as the Mazda 2 or the Honda Fit, but it's an awful lot more fun than the Sonic or the Kia Rio. Overall, however, the Fiesta has just the best package in this subcompact market, especially if you want a little bit more loaded hatch than you can get in the competition. With the My Ford Touch system, this very attractive front end on the Fiesta, this is definitely my pick for the subcompact market at the moment. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been our quick look at the 2014 Ford Fiesta. Be sure and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of our latest videos. Go ahead and comment on this video, tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, and go ahead and post any questions you have about the Fiesta down there as well, and we'll see you next week. Oh. Help.